Welcome to Cooking from the Cave. I'm Chef Pete Truziak, and today I'm going to show you pan-seared halibut with some roasted asparagus. Also, that's going to go with a butter sauce, and that butter sauce is typically, you'll find them in restaurants called Beurre Blancs. And I'll show you a very easy way of making that sauce today. We're going to start off with that butter sauce, or the Beurre Blanc. And the first thing you want to do is you want to infuse the wine that we're going to cook that butter sauce down with flavorings of your likes. I'm going to use what is traditionally found in a Beurre Blanc. We're going to use about a cup of white wine, and if you were making a Beurre Rouge, which would be a red butter sauce, that Beurre Rouge we would obviously use a cup of red wine instead. The Beurre Blancs can be used or infused with really almost any herb. Traditionally, you'll find thyme. So this is 12 sprigs of fresh thyme. I have 10 peppercorns, the whole peppercorns, and 1 shallot, and the shallot is sliced up. This seems kind of weird for a sauce, but we're going to strain this out, so there's a lot of ingredients in there right now that you typically wouldn't find or want to eat raw, or at least in the shape that it's in. Don't worry, we're going to infuse this white wine, and I will show you what happens next. Once that white wine reduces by about, there's a cup in there right now, we want to reduce it down to about an ounce. So leave that going on high heat. The next step is going to be the halibut. The halibut will take probably the longest to cook, even though it's going to be fairly fast. We're going to do that in this pan here. And what we'll do over here is we're going to first season the halibut up. And this is a halibut fillet, so there's no bones running through it. It still has the skin on, which is typically how you're going to buy halibut. And right now, where I live, halibut is in season. So one, you're going to see a nice, beautiful colored skin. It will either be white, maybe going a little gray, or it'll be black. Either way, you're either getting the top side of the fish or the bottom side. You will still have the same fillets that you're looking at here, though. So regardless of what color that skin is, it's still going to be looking exactly the same way. What we're going to do is I'm going to cut this into 2 pieces, and I'm going to cut it lengthwise. And now I'm just going to season it up with some pepper. And halibut has such a great flavor to begin with. There's really you don't need to add a lot to it. Some kosher salt. And if you add sea salt, you can use sea salt at this point too. But halibut speaks for itself. So just a little pepper, a little salt, and you're good to go. Now over here, I'm going to heat up my pan to a medium to medium-high heat. While that's going on, let's talk about the asparagus. The asparagus is going to get roasted in the oven. Halibut is a wonderfully tasting fish. It lends itself to other flavors. Asparagus is in season right now. I'm going to drizzle garlic. I'm going to drizzle oil. This is olive oil on the asparagus. A pinch of fresh thyme. I don't want to use all of it because I'm going to use some more of that fresh thyme later on for the Beurre Blanc. And then garlic. And we're just going to go ahead and drop the garlic cloves. And I have about 6 garlic cloves. I'm going to just drop those in there, press them out. And I'm keeping an eye on my sauce over here, because once the wine starts to boil, it'll go fairly quick. Season the asparagus with another pinch or 2 of salt. Cracked pepper on it. Drizzle just a touch more olive oil. We're going to transfer the asparagus with the garlic on it, and we're going to put it on a roasting pan. I'm going to spread them out fairly thin. so that they're not overlapping too much. And this is 1 pound of asparagus. And if there's any left over, we can kind of work that in with the asparagus as well. And then this asparagus is going to go into the oven at 400 degrees for about 10 to 12 minutes. Our pan has been heating up, and it's about at that medium to medium-high temperature. Let me talk about the halibut really quick. The white side, or if you get one that is dark skin, just know that it's the exact same fish, same fillet, and everything. It's just that when the fish swims, the dark side is swimming facing upward and the white side is facing down. It works almost as a camouflage effect for the other fish, so it's not seen. So don't worry if you do get that black skin, it's still a beautiful piece of halibut. I've added some olive oil to the pan, and the olive oil I'm just going to swirl around the bottom of the pan, make sure it's hot enough. I'm then going to lay it skin side down. And you can hear it starting to sear in there, that's good. Lay the second piece down. And I'm really going to let the fish sit on that first side with the skin for majority of the time of cooking. So probably somewhere between 6 and 7 minutes I'm going to let it sit there. The skin's going to get really crispy. It's going to develop a lot of color. While that's cooking, I want to come over here and show you what our sauce looks like. Our sauce, remember, we started with a cup of white wine. It's reduced quite a bit. So all that I have left is what's down here. It has a lot of great flavor. Your next step with this is to strain it. And we're going to strain it back here in another saucepan. And this is why, don't worry about how you cut the shallots or that you're using whole thyme leaves and stems and all that stuff, and the peppercorns. All that flavor is now infused right there in that white wine. So we're going to turn that pan back on low heat for that Beurre Blanc sauce. And we're going to add a little bit of cream. So I have 1 ounce of cream back here. And what this cream does is it helps stabilize while you're making the Beurre Blanc sauce. I give it a swirl. And I'm going to let it actually sit now so that the cream comes up to the temperature of the white wine. That white wine and the cream fuse together. So I'm going to let it sit for about a minute to a minute and a half. I added my cream. It came up to temperature. I then pulled out some butter right from the freezer. I put it in the freezer so that it's really cold. You don't want to have room temperature butter when making a Beurre Blanc. What happens is you really want this butter to help temper this sauce, and you have to be careful about how you're adding it. So on the safe side, I dice up my butter, and then I put it in the freezer so it cools down immediately, and now it's ready to be used. I don't even want to handle it too much, but let me show you something with the fish before we go into that butter, or finishing up our butter sauce. This is a fish spatula, and if you look at the counter, you see how much that spatula bends. The importance of having a spatula that bends that much is so that you can get underneath the fish, and I'm literally scraping the bottom of the pan, and these are all-clad stainless steel pans so they can handle the spatula scraping it. And you can see the coloring that's occurring on the skin, which will give it that nice crispy texture. You can also see a little white line of where the fish is being cooked. We're almost at that point where I want to flip it, and since I've already lifted it up, I'm going to go ahead and flip it. I'm going to drop it down, and I'm going to do the same thing again. With that real flexible spatula, I'm going to scrape along the bottom of the pan, get underneath the skin. I'm looking for that color, I'm looking for that white line. I'm going to flip this over, and I said about 7 minutes on the one side, you'll get this nice golden brown skin, nice texture on it. Let's give it another 5 minutes on the meat side, and while that's going, we can make our Beurre Blanc. Now making a Beurre Blanc is real easy. You got to cut the butter, you got to get that butter really cold, and then just get yourself a good whisk. I'm going to stir constantly, and I'm going to drop 1 cube of butter in at a time. Now this seems like a slow process, but don't forget, this sauce is heated up, it's warm, so it's going to melt the butter fairly quick. I'll probably give you the warning of doing maybe no more than 6 cubes at a time. Wait for them to get about halfway melted in your pan, and then you're going to add another 6. It's really that simple. So they're about half melted. I'm going to add another 6 now. And I'm going to continue this process till all my butter is melted and my sauce is kind of doubled or tripled in volume. I just finished whisking in the last of our butter, and as a word of advice, and I've done this hundreds, maybe thousands of times in restaurants, it's okay while you're stirring this butter, if you think that, oh, it's melting too fast, pull it off the heat, stir in that butter, let it melt, and then bring it back to the heat. This is an emulsion you're creating, and it's a very difficult emulsion to create because you're taking something cold, a fat, and putting it with something hot, which is the acid, and you're trying to make that work together, almost like you're making a salad dressing. It's not easy. You're probably gonna break a few of these sauces beforehand, but that's what that 1 ounce of cream does. It balances out that 1 ounce of white wine that's been reduced, or I should say that cup of white wine that's been reduced down to 1 ounce. And that 1 ounce of cream balances out, so it kind of helps stabilizes that acid before you put in that stick of butter. So there's 4 ounces of butter in here, 1 ounce of cream, and at the end about 1 ounce of white wine in here. Again, you would do the exact same thing if you were making a Beurre Rouge, which is a red butter sauce. Just substitute, instead of the white wine, you're going to use red wine. Now at this point, I'm going to add the remainder of, so about 1 teaspoon to 1.5 teaspoons of fresh thyme. I'm going to stir that in, and I typically use unsalted butter. If I was using salted butter, I wouldn't have to do this next step. That's sprinkle in a teaspoon of, or I shouldn't say that, about a half a teaspoon or a pinch of salt. Crack some more pepper in there. And I really get this tasting the way I want it to. I can put it back on my stove. I don't have any heat on it right now, but the residual heat from my stove will keep it warm without separating it. And then we can check on our asparagus. And keep in mind, this is a fairly quick dish. I mean, this is, start to finish with the asparagus, maybe 20 minutes at most. So, asparagus is done, our halibut's ready, our sauce is done, all that's left is for plate up. So let me show you how I would plate this dish up. It's really that simple. The asparagus goes down, put some of the butter sauce on top. And there you go, a real simple, elegant pan-seared halibut with some roasted asparagus and a Beurre Blanc sauce. Thank you so much for watching Cooking from the Cave. I'm Chef Pete Trusiak. I will see you real soon.